Hello, my lovely humans, especially my law enthusiast humans. It's FCA, your outside juror, here to give you the updates, summaries, and highlights of the Kouri Richins trial in this particular case. And the trial is out of Utah, where Kouri Richins has been accused of attempted murder, first-degree aggravated murder, insurance fraud, and forgery of checks. Those are the four things she has been charged with in this particular trial. She has another trial with charges of more egregious financial crimes. Day one, we get jury instructions from Judge M, and these are really thorough jury instructions. He tells the jurors like what overruling versus sustaining objections mean. He goes through a lot of legal terminology with the jury. Into opening statements, the prosecution goes first on day one, and Prosecutor Bloodworth, yes, that is his name, Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth, is the lead prosecutor on this case, and he just decided to go in hard with mic drop after mic drop after mic drop. He starts in 2 sentences into his opening, and he reveals to the jury that Kouri Richins was having an affair and names her boyfriend. In all of the other pretrial motions leading up to this, we have never gotten a name released for the boyfriend, or as the prosecution put it in all of their other motions, the paramour. Paramour's name, the lover's name, is Robert Grossman. And because in order to get to first-degree murder, you have to show premeditation. And Brad Bloodworth immediately shows that in December of 2021, because the murder took place in 2022. The attempted one was February 14th, and then the actual murder was 3 weeks later in the first week of March 3rd into March 4th. So December 27th of 2021, a couple days after Christmas, Kouri Richins books vacation tickets, a full-on romantic couple resort thing in the Caribbean. And I'm going to put up the thing here, a screenshot of what was shown to the jury in opening statements. This is the ticket that has, and you'll see Kouri Richins in highlighted, and then there's RG, Robert Grossman. And it's weird that she puts it like that instead of anything else, because Eric Richins' name is not going to be confused with RG of this little vacation getaway. And it's to take place in April 2022. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kouri Richins and Eric Richins had a prenuptial agreement where if they got divorced, they would just leave with whatever they had. And Eric Richins had a lot of assets. He was a wealthy man. And Kouri Richins wants to be a wealthy woman, but her real estate business and financial choices, as it turns out, allegedly, aren't that great. If they get divorced, she just leaves with whatever she came with, which wasn't a lot and not as much as Eric has. However, if he were to die while they were still lawfully married, Kouri would get all of his assets, estate, and everything else. Except that unbeknownst to Kouri Richins, Eric, around 2021, had switched all of his assets from going to Kouri to a trust that his sister was in charge of for his children. She doesn't know that yet. But she's booking this trip in April, in December of 2021, for April of 2022. Where did she think she was going to be going? What did she think was going to be happening between her and Eric Richins? Were they going to get divorced? The defense tried really hard to keep a lot of this stuff out, but the judge allowed it, at least for opening statements, and it could possibly come in later through other witnesses. But during opening, he also puts a picture that on the day that Eric Richins passed away, at 8:30 that day, the paramour, the boyfriend, sends like a romantic kissy face thing saying that he loved her. And Kouri says, sorry, I'm not mad at you. I just haven't had time to text. Love you too. What are you busy doing, Kouri? What's keeping you at 8:30 at night? Also get that Eric Richins was declared that he had passed away at 3:58 in the morning, technically on March 4th. All right? Technically on March 4th. At 8:30 a.m. Okay, we're talking 4 hours. 4.5 hours after her husband is declared dead. She has memes, some GIFs on her phone, and I will put the picture up here. And they were just a screenshot of the GIFs, but the one shows somebody rubbing their face in money. Another one is just talking about, I'm really rich, is what the bottom part says. And you can see, I was watching Emily D. Baker. Look at that face. That's all of our faces on her device. And they had been put on there 8:30 in the morning after her husband passes away. That's where he leaves it. Ben's opening statements weren't very mic droppy. It was very muddy, is how I'm going to describe it. They start off by really trying to vilify the victim in this case. They want to say how Eric Richins, insisted on and had to check Kouri's phone regularly. And they have the nerve to go, and we know he did this. How do you know he did this? But it's opening, it's not evidence. And then they're trying to imply that he's this heavy, he's addicted to painkillers. He's addicted to prescription drugs. And that he takes his anger out on Kouri. And by the way, she's saying all of these terrible things while his family is in the courtroom. And then they proceed to misstate evidence. They put up a picture of some drugs because of a surgery that Eric Richins had had. He was given a prescription painkiller. There were still pills in the case, in the photo. And then she says, these expired in 2016. And that's not what it says. It clearly says, do not refill until 2016. Expires in 2020. And they push that Kouri's story has stayed consistent. She's stayed the same. She's told the same story since day one with the detectives. That no one knows how Eric Richins died. No one knows how he died. The medical examiner doesn't know how he died. Nobody to this day knows how Eric Richins died. There's an autopsy, and in the medical report, the autopsy report, it said he OD'd on fentanyl. There was a lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. I think we know how he died. And then she ends with a little spiel about how the government is trying to set her up, trying to take some pieces right out of Karen Reed, saying that the prosecution, the government, did such a terrible job. They're setting her up. Her family, that Eric Richins' family, blamed Kouri from the beginning. They hate her. They've been trying to get her for years. And that they hired investigators and detectives who are in this case for the prosecution side, implying that Eric Richins' family paid off the prosecution. Not as mic droppy. On a little side note, the prosecution had this amazing, his name is Scott, and he's just amazing mustache. He has, look at that. That's glory, is that not? He went to turn when I was watching the trial. I was like, look at the mustache. That is a top tier mustache. It was worth noting. I mean, look at it. The first witness who we have up is Eric Richins' father. We learn that Eric Richins' father is his only living parent right now. His mother had passed away years ago due to a bacterial lung infection, because Gene Richins is sitting there telling his story, and only to have the judge have to, after a defense objection, explain that this is to say the context of what he did next. It's not to be taken as the truth of the matter. What does the defense not want the jury to think is the truth of the matter? Eric Richins' father had said that when he found out that, Kouri called him in the middle of the night, he passed away, and he went over there as soon as he could. He was upset. He was distraught. He couldn't believe it. He called his daughter, Katie. It was very hard to watch. He's trying to keep his composure, but you can feel the emotion through the screen, and it sucks for this poor man. But he says that Kouri calls him one day and says, yeah, Eric died. They found that Eric died of the same thing his mother did. His son passed away the same way as his wife, which is clearly very upsetting to him. So he calls Katie. Katie calls the medical examiner's office. One, at that time, they hadn't even released the cause of death. And two, Kouri never called them. They never called Kouri. So she's lying about the cause of death. And to say it so cruelly, and it's a lie. The defense chooses not to cross-examine this witness. Smart. Then that same sister, Katie, gets brought on the stand. And Katie gives us some Kouri tea. But not before she gives a very heartfelt... She broke down crying a few times, and she kept apologizing. When the defense comes up to ask questions, first of all, let's sidetrack. We're going to step back before we get into what they actually asked her. I know, I'm teasing the tea. I'm just distracted. Maybe I should have held that off. Anywho, what it is, the defense, they clear the jury. The witness steps down and goes out into the waiting hall for a little bit, because the defense asks Judge M, we're wondering if we could just save us all some time, if I could just ask all the questions I want to ask Katie during my cross-examination. For the cross-examination, though, is restricted to whatever was asked on direct examination. Otherwise, you can get the objection outside the scope, which means outside the scope of direct. So you can't ask whatever you want. Well, that's what the defense attorney wants. Attorney Nestor wants the judge to allow her to do her direct examination questions now during her cross-examination and kind of have a hostile witness. Hostile doesn't mean I'm going to fight you. Hostile means that it's the opposing side's witness. And there's some confusion. Well, if she's on your witness list, you can ask her whatever direct questions or things outside of this direct on your case. You can just call her back. Well, then we find out that Katie is a victim rep, which means she's allowed to sit in court to represent the victim and the victim's family, so she gets to watch the whole trial. And she's like, well, I can't do that because if she's allowed to sit in the whole trial, then she could change her testimony by the time our time comes. Well, she tries anyway. She tries and she gets objected to. They have to clear the courtroom again for another chitty chat. And she says, and she goes, you see, they're not letting me do my cross. Well, during the before the little chitty chat has to happen, the prosecutor comes up and says, we looked it up and the defense never subpoenaed Katie. Never. She was never on their witness list, and defense attorney Nestor knew that. She knew that Katie, that's why she was trying to get away with, let me ask whatever I want now, then we don't have to worry about bringing her back. she was never subpoenaed. The audacity to look over at her paralegal and go, she's not on our list. We can give you an amended witness list. The judge was ticked. Bloodworth's ticked. We're ticked. And when the judge asks them to approach, you can hear and see the defense attorney just, I don't have a pen nearby. She just takes her pen and just, you can audibly hear her just fling the pen. And in front of the jury too. If she wants to bring up the trust. Because they brought up the trust, she wants to be able to bring up some stuff about the trust. And she's like, I'm going to have her look at the trust. And is this the document you signed? Is this trust familiar to you? Do you know this document? Kind of stuff. And the prosecution brings up that that's not in evidence. She's like, I'm not trying to bring it up in evidence. I just want to ask her questions about it and make sure that this is the document that she is familiar with, knows this is the trust, etc. And so the judge is like, all right. And then 1 minute in, she goes, do you know this document, all those things? And then she goes, can we admit this into evidence? Bruh. You literally 45 seconds ago just told this judge to his face, not only that this witness was on your witness list and she wasn't, but that you weren't going to put this into evidence. I don't want it in evidence. I'm not trying to get it into evidence. Then immediately, can we put this into evidence? And then the defense starts asking about financial things. We had a whole motions in limine. These are pretrial motions to limit things ahead of time. And they fought and won to keep a bunch of financial stuff out. But she's asking Katie a bunch of financial stuff, which then opens the door on redirect for the prosecution to go, you had mentioned the defense attorney talked about how you talked to Detective Woody about that Eric had stolen money, or that Kouri had stolen money from Eric, correct? Correct. And why did you say that? Because he had told me he went to go get cash out of an ATM and it was gone. His account was gone. There was no money in it. And he had received notice about a life insurance policy in his name, a life insurance policy on him that he knew nothing about. And then when she tried to say, so your family was really against alcohol use, right? Like you said your brother talked to you about everything. Well, wouldn't it make sense that you said your mother was a drug and alcohol specialist and you guys were all really close and religious, and so your mother would be against like marijuana use? And Katie goes, my mother wasn't against marijuana use. She talked to us a lot about prescription drugs mostly. That was the big one, and like abusing alcohol. And she goes, oh, okay. And she goes, but your brother wouldn't want to tell you and then you tell your mom if he was like using THC gummies and when he was on painkillers. She was like, he was on painkillers when he had surgery and he only took them a few times and he never got it refilled. And she goes, he actually went to I set him up with an acupuncturist and that really helped him pretty quickly and he hadn't used them since. And she was like, but back to these THC gummies. And she goes, I never knew him to take a THC gummy, but he had told me that Kouri used them. Kouri used them, the THC gummies, because the only time that we have heard about the ingestion or Eric taking THC gummies is from Kouri. Some other witnesses. We get into watching some body cam footage, and there's an oddly lot amount of questions about, okay, do you know what a THC gummy looks like? Do you know what edibles look like? Do you know like what marijuana like things are? Would you know what you were looking for? And the cop is sitting there like, yeah, I know all those things. And did you know to look for them in this case when you showed up at the scene? Yeah, because Kouri Richins told us that her husband, who was the deceased person, had had a couple of drinks of alcohol before bed and he took a THC gummy, so we were looking for them. Which was a weird line of questioning until day 3. But through day 2 we have more testimony from some more police officers. We get into the medical examiner, which, lo and behold, alcohol, or no way to parse whether there was alcohol that he had drank in his system, because when the body starts to decompose, it creates ethanol. So there isn't a way to distinguish the two, and there wasn't enough in his stomach where they could say, oh yeah, he was definitely having something else. This is beyond this level of decomposition ethanol buildup. They didn't have that. And they did not find, are you ready for it, ladies and gentlemen? What did they not find in Eric Richins' system? THC. Kouri has been blaming the possible ingestion of fentanyl on the THC gummies that maybe were laced when he got them from Mexico. There were no other opioids, no other painkillers that were in his system, nothing that had lingered except fentanyl. And the defense made a big whoop about some pictures and videos that were taken, and the defense kept intentionally saying that it's very sus, that they kept on saying the altered version, this new version, the new altered version. She said it like 4 times. The prosecution, Bloodworth, wasn't on his side. He went, Your Honor, could you please explain what the altered version is for the jury? And the way that Attorney Nestor looked at Bloodworth when he said that, it was like, you're ruining my fun. And he was like, oh yes, the children's faces and the body of the decedent have been blurred. Those were the alterations made. A month after Eric Richins passes away, there is a warrant that is issued to search the home more thoroughly, and they find some pill bottles, some prescription pill bottles, and some brownies and some other things that weren't there the night when the police originally searched, and in the same areas where we saw them search. And when they went through and did the search on the search warrant, April 13th, we find these pill bottles, but guess whose name is on them? It's not Eric Richins, it's all Kouri. And that's why it mattered when they were asking the cop on scene, like, would you recognize what gummies come in? Do you know what kind of different containers they're in, and etc.? Because later on, they were found in those same areas. So the prosecution was like, are you sure you knew what you were looking for? Yes, because then where were they? Where were they, Kouri? Kouri Richins is arrested on May 8th. And like, we already know that. We knew that Kouri Richins, through the other testimony, that she gets arrested on May 8th. But then on day 3, when the defense is asking one of the people who was on the scene, one of the evidence collectors, they're asking her all sorts of questions about, like, why didn't you do this? How did you do this? Did you take pictures of this? Why didn't you go here, there, wherever? And she goes, you were collecting, you overheard the phone calls, right? They were trying to get the 911 call in through just the wrong witness, and they couldn't get the whole 911 call. And the reason is because the defense cannot elicit self-serving statements, which means outside of court statements not made by the defendant to try to enhance her credibility now. That's often not a part of hearsay exception. And there's also the hearsay of if there was anybody else on the call, dispatch, depending on what they said. 911 calls usually come in through the correct witness, usually dispatch themselves. But they're trying to get it in through the evidence tech, who was like, yeah, I was in charge of photos and getting stuff, and I document things and maintain them. But I wasn't the one who recorded or made the jail call. Then we have where the defense also tries, it seems, through my opinion, that they were trying to get under the skin of this witness. Like, oh, you don't know that? Oh, you didn't do that? Oh, you didn't go here? But the witness couldn't look less bothered. She was like, nope, didn't do that. Nope, that's not my job. No, I don't recall that. Wants to ask her about recorded calls. Now, recorded calls could be wiretapping, recorded calls could be voicemails or voice messages. Recorded calls could be jail calls, which is what she was referring to, but she didn't want to say jail calls. She's like, did you receive recordings of Miss Richins communicating with her family? And the witness says, can you clarify? She doesn't clarify. She just repeats the question again. And the witness is like, do you mean the jail calls? And then it all gets thrown in the air because it can be prejudicial if the jury thinks they're supposed to presume that this person is innocent until proven guilty, and it can portray Kouri in prejudiced light if they know that she's been arrested. But we already brought up previously that she was arrested May 8th, so it's not new. And then the judge had an emergency. He was like, yeah, I have a conflict that's unavoidable. I can't be here. I need to be there. So cases or the trial is over for today. We're in recess until tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye. You're still under subpoena. Bye. Don't do any outside research. Bye. And that's the end of that. I will see you all in the next one. Links for everything below.